your shoulders and twist your hips. Let a lady confess, I want to be that. If it's naughty to vamp the men, sleep each morning till after 10, then the answer is yes, I want to be that.
What can I get you, Mac? We got hamburgers, hot dogs, and Coca-Cola. What's going on, you guys and dolls? Two Guns Drake here. And if you notice, I got a little bit of a different backdrop today. That's because I'm coming at you today from an actual building from the 20s and 30s. I'm here at the Lear Historical Society's Coal Miners Museum in Van Lear, Kentucky. An actual company building dating back to the Prohibition era and before. So, what do you say we take a look around at some real history today? Now, you can't talk about the Prohibition era, the 20s and 30s, without talking about the labor movements. You can't talk about it without talking about what was going on in Kentucky and West Virginia and other parts of the country in that era, with the rise of the unions and the coal wars. You ever seen Mate 1? If you haven't seen Mate 1, you need to go see that movie, guys and dolls. But here we are at a piece of real history from that era. This building was actually built in 1912 as the headquarters for the Consolidation Coal Company right here in Van Lear. That's right. If you know anything about that era, then you know that the company towns were owned by their respective companies, and they owned everything. They owned the post office, the schools, the jails, everything. Everybody was an employee. This was one of those towns, and this is the building that they ran the town out of. I think that's pretty neat. How about you? Yeah, just think of all of the coal miners and company men and gun thugs that walked through these hallowed doors back in the day. You know, you're looking at a portal here into the 20s and 30s. That's why I like these old buildings. You know, you can make your set pieces, you can have your nice little CGI backdrops, but this is the real deal, and it's like being able to touch a piece of 1920s and 1930s history. You can see from where we are now how big this building really was. Yeah, from what I've been told, this building actually had the mayor's office, a doctor's office, a barber shop, Masonic lodge, the offices for the mines, the post office, a jail, everything inside this building. This was like City Hall back then. I guess this was like, it probably wasn't the largest building in town. I think that was like the recreation center they had here, or maybe one of the stores. They had some pretty big stores back in the day, company stores. But this building was the center of the town, and I mean, look how monolithic it is. Like, you can imagine that this was like a bustling metropolis of a company town back in the day, and like, imagine what went on here, how many people walked through this from back then. You know, people going in to check their mail, people going to visit the company doctor, you know, people going to talk to the mayor. This was it. So why don't we take a look at some more of the history surrounding this magnificent building from the era. Hey, check this out, you mugs. We even have the old town jail here. Looks like they have a cage inside a cage kind of deal with some pretty thick brick walls here, masonry. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be getting out of this place unless you're John Dillinger, because John Dillinger could get out of anything. I don't think old Johnny Boy was anywhere around Van Lear back then, but you never know. And here we have an old piece of mining equipment from back in the day. This was an old cutting machine. Took this chainsaw blade and cut up underneath the coal seam and then blasted the coal downward to fracture it. Yeah, I know a little bit about coal mining. In the 1950s, a guy named Icky Wetzel actually ran a restaurant out of the bottom floor of this building. Another little piece of history. A little later than than what we cover on the channel, but I think that's pretty neat. You're talking about like the time of Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe, JFK. There was a little snack shop and restaurant in this building. And I always admire an original building that has its original fixtures, especially the doorknobs. I love these old doorknobs. Alright guys and dolls, I'm here with a local historian named Danny Blevins. Now Mr. Danny Blevins is a lifelong resident of Van Lear. You grew up here, correct?
Yeah, I was born in Wabash, Indiana, but we moved back here where my parents were raised when I was about 4 years old.
And so, seeing as you literally wrote the book on Van Lear, and links in the description here, this gentleman wrote the book on Van Lear and its history. What can you tell us about the history of this particular building and what it was used for in the 20s and 30s?
Okay, so the Consolidation Coal Company basically bought this whole valley out in 1909, and the post office was established here as Van Lear Post Office in 1910, and then the city itself was incorporated in 1912. Now, early on, the Consolidation Coal Company built its first office building about, well, nearly 2 miles down the road, and it stood there for a very short time, burned down, and then this building was built around 1913. And the building itself served as the nerve center of the town. The town manager would have worked here, engineers worked here, and they had doctors' offices here and different things like that. But it was where the whole town was orchestrated and run from this building.
Now that's very interesting. Like, this was a company town, and that's what I've been explaining to them here on the channel, is that these company towns, the company actually owned everything. They owned your house, they owned the school, the stores. Everyone who lived here was essentially a company employee. Even the doctors, in fact, were company employees. And so this building would have been like the hub of all of that in this town, right?
Right. Everything really generated out of this building. Blueprints were made for things that they needed to do in the mines or things like that with the engineers. And if you got sick, a lot of times you'd end up going to the doctor here. And just all the business of the company was conducted out of this building.
And do you know any fun anecdotal stories about anything involving this building or this town in the Prohibition era, moonshiners or anything like that?
Not really. Not that I can.
I'm sure there were a lot here, though.
There's probably a lot that went on here that we don't know today, because this was more of the downtown. This building is here. Right next door you had a large community center where orchestras would play and things like that. Beside that building was a meat market. Across the road was a large company store, the Van Lear Company Store #1. And I've heard old people that grew up here and spent their lives saying you could buy everything you needed pretty much at that store except for a car. And if you couldn't get anything like things that you wanted, maybe specialty items, a certain radio or something, you could order those from like the Sears Roebuck catalog.
So the company store, which was across the road from this building, was kind of like the super Walmart of the day.
Yeah, it was really big, and you could go in there and buy your groceries for the week. You could get a suit of clothes custom cut for you. You could buy shoes. You could buy furniture. The building was very large and had an elevator in it, and they actually built an annex on the back to accommodate more things. It had its own side track so that stock could be brought in by the railroad, and the basement served as an ice factory for the big ice blocks that went in the ice boxes.
Nice. Now, I know you were telling me that the jail was right behind you originally.
Yes, the Van Lear jail. I think we talked about it being in another location originally, but the cage was made in Canton, Ohio. There's a large cage, I think it's like a 3-man cell, and it used to be in this adjoining room. And they actually lock people in that, and they have police court here in Van Lear. So they had a mayor and people that served in different capacities, but they had a police
And
force.
they would have, all of that would have been housed in this building, this one building. Because I've heard that the mayor's office was here, like the police chief was here, the jail was here, like this was like the big city hall.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know if you mugs have it in mind that these smaller towns back in the 20s and 30s were all like Mayberry. Like they were very small, they're very rural. There was nothing going on. You didn't have a movie theater. You didn't have. That's not true. You had restaurants. You had theaters. You know, you had a bustling metropolis just crammed down in this one little valley. Imagine, you know, traveling across Appalachia back then and finding all of these company towns. And you would be basically moving from a small city, a very civilized city, to another. And how many would you say there were, like in terms of like the company towns that were like this? I know there was Van Lear, and Van Lear had a sister city of Jenkins, but how many cities would you estimate were in this area that were company towns like this?
It was numerous. I really haven't ever seen a figure put on it, but it was numerous for all of this eastern Kentucky coal field.
The dozens.
And some of them, you know, didn't last as long as Van Lear did. They were kind of, the mines played out or whatever. And then there were some towns that were created by companies that didn't have the resources of consolidation coal companies. So those places, they sometimes didn't have all the amenities that you found here. And this place was, before the Consolidation Coal Company bought it, it was just a few farms. And originally a guy by the name of Porter, he owned the whole valley at one time, and he kind of started divesting plots off for farms to his children. And then in 1909, like I said, Mayo and his associates had bought everything up here themselves, and then they sold it to the Consolidation Coal Company. And one newspaper writer, I think, actually referred to Van Lear as the overnight city. And I have a friend who actually wrote another book on Van Lear by that title, Van Lear, the Overnight City. It's like a boom town. So you went from basically a few farms to many, many houses that were built very quickly, and we did have things like movie theaters and different things that were unknown before the companies came in.
Now this building has another purpose today. It's a museum. It's the Van Lear Historical Society's Coal Miners Museum. And like people can take tours here, correct? Like see a little bit of what the old town was like and artifacts, and really kind of step back in time a little bit. So if some of these guys and gals watching the channel wanted to come down here and take a tour of this building and the town, well, what could they come see, and like how much would it cost them and all that?
Well, I'm not really up on the prices, to be honest with you, because I haven't been doing this. It was $5 a person. I'm not sure if it's still that or not, but the Van Lear Historical Society got this building as a donation from one of the local banks. So we've taken the many rooms and repurposed them to show how the life was here and how things were operated here. Now the doctor's office is still a doctor's office, and this is still a store. But we had the post office at one time in this building, and we've got some of the remnants of the old Van Lear post office to look at. There's a model of the city that was built by one of the members in Arkansas and actually sawed up and transported here by U-Haul and then reassembled in the upstairs. So we've got that. We've got a room that honors our military. Anyone who served from Van Lear in the military, man or woman, no matter what branch, they can put their picture in here and be honored and remembered for their service. And many rooms showing the implements that were used in the mines, and a room that commemorates the school and the sports that we had associated with the schools. So something for everybody.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's a rather famous celebrity that's from, like, what, 2-3 miles up the road here, in fact.
Yeah, Van Lear is the hometown of Loretta Lynn. Now, most people hear Butcher Hollow, but Butcher Hollow is just one section of Van Lear. And Butcher Hollow never had its own post office. It's never been a town of its own.
It's essentially just like a neighborhood in the town.
Yeah, like most urban people would call it a suburb in the United States. So it's kind of outlined from Van Lear, but it's in Van Lear's postal district.
And so if they came down here, they could visit the museum here and see into Van Lear's past, to see into like the past of essentially all coal mining towns, because there was a lot of similarities that all towns shared in terms of the tools the miners used, the shared history, the UMWA and the labor strikes and all that. They could come here and get a taste of that.
Right.
And like you said, actually see like a model of the town and see like the military history of the town and the medical history of the town, and then actually see the home of a famous country music singer.
Right, see her childhood home, see the building where she went to school, which we hope to have opened up here in the future sometimes. We do own that, the society owns that. And her brother operated the number 2, which the locals call the number 5 store. It's still in operation, so you can visit the store that Herman Webb operated.
Thank you for agreeing to talk with me about Van Lear here. And like I said, I'll put a link down below to this gentleman's book if you're interested in learning more about the history of this coal city. You know, you can check that out. But thank you again for talking to me and talking to my viewers here.
You're very welcome. I was glad to do it, and hope a few of you will purchase my book and learn even more about this town.
And come here for yourself to see it. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to meet you.
Right.